If you want to be the best at something, you have to lose sight of everything else. I was weak. One day, I was riding my bike, and because I had squatted and lifted so hard that day, my legs started seizing up to the point where I slowed to a stop and I just tipped over. But what I later found was that was probably arguably like one of the biggest decisions of my life. Because at that point, everything changed.
Welcome to the Rest Factor podcast. On today's show, we have Bert Sorin. Bert is currently the president and co-owner of Sorinex exercise equipment, a very successful family-run business founded by his father, another big name in the iron game, Richard Sorin. Together, they are the inventors of hardware and applications to make athletes more effective, efficient, and safe on the sports field and on the battlefield. His gear is changing the game to provide readiness and rebuilding to military service members prior to, during, and after their deployments. Bert Sorin's Be Legendary 10 Steps for Leading an Impactful Life will offer insights into effective leadership and personal development and how he's applied these to his life as an entrepreneur and father. Welcome to the Rest Factor podcast. I'm your host, Anna Marie Schick. I'm a certified health coach and resident sleep expert at Sleep Me. On today's show, we have Bert Sorin. Bert, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Anna Marie. I appreciate it.
So firstly, for those who may not know, Sorinex is the most sought after brand for strength training facilities on the professional level, professional teams, colleges, high schools, and military units. It wasn't until I met you and your dad that being in the health and wellness field myself and being in and around gyms constantly and traveling, I started seeing your brand everywhere. It's crazy how you don't see things until you see things, and then that's all you see.
Right.
So
well,
dating back.
I appreciate that. That's the intent. I think some days we actually do it too. So it's
dating back to 1980, correct?
Yes, yeah, 1980 is when my father started the company out of our carport. So that was, he loved building stuff and thought that he could do it better than what was in the industry. And he was a big, strong guy and said that, he wished that he could purchase stuff that was better, but A, we didn't have money, and B, we had a little bit of time and ingenuity. So we figured we'd take a stab at it.
Yeah. And what I love about visiting your headquarters in South Carolina and Lexington is the museum that you have that kind of traces back all the way to the beginnings of exercise equipment, all the way down to cement blocks and how your dad worked with the weight of cement and the weight of iron to literally make barbells and dumbbells and exercise equipment well before its time. He just knew the movements, the mechanics, and how he wanted to pick them up or have them picked up.
Right. You're exactly right. And I think it's partly he was an only child and his parents worked, so he was kind of like relegated to the backyard, and so he had to become creative and have some ingenuity, but then he also had a love for physical prowess and strength of the mind, and that was those pieces of the puzzle were put into him early on as a kid, and through media, through movies, through Hercules Unchained and through Moby Dick and all these like epic movies and books and magazines he would read. And then so he kind of built who he wanted to be in life, and then from a literal and figurative standpoint. So when he realized that struggling and pulling and pushing on heavy stuff would make him stronger and closer to who he wanted to be in life, he just took it all the way.
That's amazing. And Sorinex has been credited with introducing innovative equipment like, and I didn't know this, the landmine and rig systems. Can you share the inspiration and the development process behind these innovations?
Yeah, the landmine, it's interesting. They always say necessity is the mother of invention. And, I've had people say before, or even like some of our business partners are like, hey, you got to, come up with the next landmine. And you're like, okay, it just doesn't happen like that. It's like, hey, come up with the next thing that the entire industry is going to copy, or it's like, okay,
Right.
I'm not that good, right? You can't just snap your finger. It had to be necessity. And so in 2000, I was training for the Olympic trials and the hammer throw. And I'm a pretty good sized guy, but I'm not the biggest. And at the time, the hammer throwers were bigger folks. I mean, it's kind of funny to say at 6'3" and 230 pounds, I'm not the biggest, but I wasn't the biggest. I was still kind of like one of the smaller guys. So I'm trying to figure out, how can I move my performance further? Okay, everyone's doing the same thing. We're all squatting 500 or 600 pounds. We're all cleaning mid threes. We're all, you start looking at all the major stuff and you're like, okay, there has to be other things that I could explore those corners and find white space in the performance world that's not being utilized. And so a friend of mine showed me an exercise where you shoved a bar into a corner and kind of did this rotational movement. And I liked it. And I said, wow, this could really bring rotational strength. But I didn't want to destroy the bar and I didn't want to destroy the corner. And so I was talking to my dad, and in 3 minutes, we designed the first landmine. It was so stupidly, we were like, oh, just take a universal joint, blah, 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 blah. And we just kind of like, okay, cool. Went in the shop the next day and built it. And, initially we're doing the twist, and then it was like, you start playing with, you go, this is good for rows. And like, oh, this is good for presses. Oh, this is like a one arm snatch. And then you start just exploring movements around this piece. And then we're going, man, this is really an effective training tool in vectors and movement patterns that aren't utilized in other places in the barbell world.
And I've even used it with rehabbing. I've even used it with clients rehabbing and physical therapy. It's so multifaceted.
It really is. And then because you have 2 dimensions of it, or the X and Y axis are movable, and then you have an arc. So then you have an offloading. The further you get into run over rise, like all those little parts and pieces, you start exploring and understanding what it does. And it was never meant to be sold. It was never meant to be a product. It was my secret weapon. Like, it was
That's
just
amazing.
I'm going to try to be better and beat those really big guys. So this is what I'm going to use. And then probably 6 to 8 months, a few people saw it. They're like, what's that? And I was like, well, I call it the landmine. And they go, why is that? I go, because it builds explosiveness at ground level. Because that was when a lot of people were sitting in machines and kind of like, hey, I want you rooted in the ground and pushing off the ground, putting force through the hips, through the core, into whatever the terminal ending was. And that's why we landed the landmine. It was kind of cheeky, kind of whatever, but there was no social media then. There was no YouTube. There was no, it's like, this is what we call it. So some people liked it and they said, will you build me one? I go, I guess. Yes, we will. Sure. And, arguably turned out to probably be the most copied design of something. Probably, of equipment wise, probably within the 2000s for sure, probably potentially within our generation. And then only followed by probably the rig. Maybe the rigs even probably spawned more things than even the landmine did. And the rig was very similar. We were Sorinex, we were known for building racks and building custom racks. But as I think that was 2007, so I've been at Sorinex for 8 years, maybe at the point, officially.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm designing racks all the time for people. And it was actually a specific university where it was a conglomeration of a lot of jobs. And again, necessity, because we would build a piece of equipment and we would customize a band hook or a plate storage or something like that, a specific height for a specific person that they wanted welded on or whatever. And then maybe that person will lose their job or they move on, and the next coach will come in and he would inherit the equipment. He goes, I really like the racks, but I wish this thing was 5 inches lower, or I wish this thing wasn't there. And you're like, oh my gosh, we're chasing our tail. Like, you can't make everybody happy. And what's right for this guy is terrible for this guy. And it would just became in 8 years of experience. I just kind of got the feeling there needs to be something different that solves the problem of designing a customized rack is better. So we started playing around with the idea of holes in all 4 directions in a rack. And that was something that Pop started playing with early on, with sideways holes in the safety spotter bars. And one day I walked out of the gym and he had them in there. I go, what are the sideways holes for? He goes, I don't know. but something will come from them one day. He goes, I've just never seen it before, so I'm just going to try it for a while. I go, what do you put in there? He goes, I don't know. He's like, but if they're there, we'll figure out something. I go, okay. And like this was like in 2005 and 2000. By 2007, I got thinking, well, gosh, what if we took that idea? What if you had holes in all four directions on a 3x3 tubing? You could start using the rack in every direction versus north and south. Well, if that's the case, you could, and then it started kind of growing into, well, let's write down everything a rack is supposed to do. Let's write down everything we dislike about racks, and then everything we've thought in our wildest dreams that we would want to do. And we took those three lists, and then we kind of kept simplifying it and designed what is known as the modern day rig, which was just a system. It was a systemization of uprights, cross members, ultimately customizable by the customer.
Wow.
Partially so I don't have to fool with it every time. Like, hey, the customer might have a great idea.
Figure out your need.
You take two wrenches and you loosen it and you move it and you put it back, and then you go, oh, that's a great idea, or no, it sucks, and then you move it back to where it was.
Right.
And so I'm a tinkerer, and so is Pop. So it was for us, it was like creating the erector set in the weightlifting world, because we got to play with, like Mr. Potato Head, or we could just move it around until we created things that didn't exist before. And so I would say it was almost like the standardization, the first time that in the weightlifting world, there was a standardization of equipment that allowed the customer to kind of be his or her own strength adventure guide. They got to choose how to do it. Well, quickly that became, there was the CrossFit was just starting to pop a little bit. And what I was seeing was these rigs that people would weld, these giant pieces of steel. And then but they would be, CrossFit generally would, if there was successful, then they would grow and they would move to a next facility. Well, then they'd have to cut apart this welded rig or rebuild it. And I'll go, what if it was just modular? And what if it was standardized pieces and you could ship them on a pallet, and then people could expand, split, merge, add
truly functional.
And that was when the war was popping off hard. I was like, they could send them to the sandbox, and guys over there in Iraq and Afghanistan will have a very good place to train. And instead of a rig, I said, well, don't make the uprights 8 feet apart, make them 4 feet apart, and go back to that 4-hole design we were thinking about. And now every upright becomes a squat rack. So now you minimize your amount of steel you're having to purchase and everything. So this all kind of gelled together as this concept. And we really kind of launched it, per se, in 2007, 2008. Actually, we had the first rig, pretty much the first rig ever was at the 2007 CrossFit Games. Wow. 2008, I'm sorry. So we brought it there as a concept to Dave Castro's actually house. And we brought it in there, and it was wild watching people. They're like, what is that? And I go, well, you could do, and they're like, yeah, but do you make squat stands? I go, yeah, we do. They go, well, we need squat stands. I go, you could squat right here. And people didn't get it at first. It was too different because they had never seen anything all together.
Never better said, outside the box.
Right, outside the box, exactly. So the rest is kind of history. Then it turned into, well, if you have holes in all four directions, now instead of making custom pieces, you're making pieces that bolt onto a rack. And then that kind of expanded and blew up the whole concept of the DIYer at home. If he or she has those component parts, go have fun. Come up with what you come up with.
Sky's the limit.
Yeah. So, I'm very proud that we had our fingerprints on those two entities. I genuinely do think that those were some of the most, utilized designs of our generation.
Yeah.
But again, they didn't come from, hey, let's go create something really cool. It was, let's fix a problem. But
necessity.
You have to
absolutely
kind of have your finger on the pulse of what the problem is, or be an end user in order to do it. Otherwise, you just don't think of that, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things you touched on that I would love to kind of dive deeper on is that I just respect and admire so much about your family is your investment, your true investment in time and energy, and in the military and service members. Everything that, from your relationship with them, how they come to you, and how you give back. Talk a little bit more about how that started. How did your involvement? I mean, when I go to your Summer Strong events or your there's just all of the people that I know in performance as well as in military that are in both. Somehow all roads lead back to Sorinex. And so how did that happen?
That's a really good question. Well, first of all, thank you. Um, I've always been interested in the military and probably some of the facets and some of the kind of life goals behind the military where it would be integrity and hard work. And so those have always been held in high regard in our family. I didn't know really enough about the military growing up. I always thought that was something that other guys did, like supermen. Like when people would talk about a Green Beret or a SEAL or whatever, I go, okay, those are just superhuman individuals. That's not me. I'm an average guy. Like that's what super special people get to do, or they go and do, because I didn't have that confidence to even know to do that. So I kind of inadvertently fell into the athletics world, which was great. And I had a wonderful experience there. But it wasn't really until later on, probably my late 20s, that I really start kind of paying more attention. You know, I remember when the towers came down and a lot of guys and girls my age were going off to war. And I was coming off of trying to make an Olympic team and going,
Mhm.
wait, I'm seeing I had the patriotism. I want to make the Olympic team and show my country off. But I'm realizing these other people are doing it in a much more severe way.
Yeah.
And then of course some start coming home in different conditions. And what I realized that although I was in the athletic world and they were in the military world, we had a lot of similarities just as
Yeah.
people. And I befriended a lot of those guys and gals, and I started realizing that I could be potentially valuable to them in their life, helping potentially put some pieces back together, share experiences, and they certainly did that for me. And so there's always been that respect, there's always been that interest. And what I've found also kind of going across the aisle per se, from athletics to military, it's kind of funny. We joke like athletes aren't impressed by athletes mostly, and military guys and gals aren't impressed by other they all hang together, but they're kind of like, yeah, whatever, Green
Yeah.
Berets can go, oh, those are SEALs, and that's green, it's like all the same thing. And then but what I found was there's a mutual respect between generally the athletes and the military, because there's no competition. There's
Right.
only value add when they get together and start working together. They realize, hey, we've gone through a lot of maybe the same things mentally, but we did it in two different mediums. And now that the the crowds have died down or the smoke is cleared, wow, there's a lot of similarities that we could really be helpful for one another, and we're both interested because there's no competition. And
Yeah,
so I've
absolutely.
found those friends very quickly, and in some ways they gave me a lot of things that I didn't have, and I was able to reciprocate. So
Yeah.
I feel extremely blessed to some of those guys tell me, they're like, our community. I go, no, that's your community. And they go, no, you're in the community. I go, I appreciate the vote of confidence here, but I don't want to ever misrepresent what I have or haven't done.
Well, I think it's your humility more than anything that has them respecting you and always coming back. I know that every event that I go to at Sorinex, it's an experience unlike no other. And to see them all, it's just one family, right? And they respect each other so mutually. And I would say 99% of the members of Special Forces that I've met have been at one of your events, and it's just incredible to see them just commingling and each community just respecting each other and sharing
Sure.
experiences. And so testament to you guys, to what
Well,
what
thank
you're
you.
doing there. I think
That
there's a
that's
common.
actually I appreciate that. And that's actually part of the mission too. I'm not going to bag on anybody, but I've seen in the strength conditioning space, the athletic space, as well as third party in the military space at times, there's competition is good, but kind of toxic,
Cutthroat.
cutthroat and bravado. I'll just be honest, I just got tired of.
Yeah.
It just grew weary of it. And it was like,
Yeah.
okay, great, and you come from the powerlifting or the Olympic lifting, like the strength sports world, there's a high probability of that ego. And you got to have an ego if you're going to put a whole bunch of weight on your back and think you're not going to die. Like you gotta believe that. But in my opinion, you don't have to perpetuate that off the platform to everyone else. And so one of the goals was to kind of reformat how strength or like strength sports athletes, and then hopefully it will bleed over into other places, how they could conduct themselves, whether um, humility, helping out their communities, being maybe better husbands, wives, dads, moms, like stuff like that. So those are the values that I had, and thought that there could be a change with some people in those industries. And so kind of the underlying goal has been to try to shift that. But you have to have a place of relevance at times to be able to help that move along. And so I think that's been probably the biggest reward of success, is having a voice in that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Bert, balancing multiple roles as an athlete, an entrepreneur, obviously, as we can see from your background, an outdoorsman, and a family man. I know, just from the times that I've been around you, just your family is very, very much a part of the whole equation. Um, Requires effective time management, I would say. As we were speaking earlier, you know when you need to be outdoors, or you know when you get your peak performance when you're outdoors, and
Yes.
so that also has to do with time management. How do you prioritize? First of all, how do you achieve effective time management? And within that, secondary question, how do you prioritize rest and recovery for peak performance across all the areas as best you can?
Sure, that's a great question. I think prioritization, at least I a lot of times think of, that's deciding what the most important part is, right? That's kind of like the definition of priority. The other side of that comes is deciding what's the least important stuff and cutting it out.
Hmm.
That's where I've kind of come to the realization is there are good things I won't be able to do or do often if I'm truly prioritizing the great things. And I know that's pretty simple, but for me, that's besides one show, maybe a week, that my kids and I like to watch together. And it's usually based on someone who I know is on TV, whether it's Rudy Reyes or Austin Legg or somebody like that. I don't watch TV. So I find out right away, I mean, for like the last 10 years.
Yeah.
So, okay, great. You know how much time I save? Well, even if that's the average person, I don't know, what, 2 hours a night, they might watch TV. Well, in 2 hours, I can read with my kids. I can make sure I'm taking in appropriate nutrition, more likely. I could have a glass of wine with my wife. I could work out, and I could shoot my bow. I could do all of 5 of those things very easily in 2 hours.
I don't know.
So I look at those and go, okay, those are priorities to me. Those are things I actually care about. And so to watch someone else, do a fake life on TV, that is a extremely low priority for me. And so I was talking to someone yesterday, and he said to me the other day, he goes, "Yeah, if you want something done, ask a busy person." And I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." And
Yeah.
I was like, "Right. The most productive people I know are the busiest people, because they realize they can't screw around. They have to make choices quickly. They have to move quickly or move on."
Yeah.
And so I find myself kind of the most productive when I have kind of too much to do,
Yeah.
which has been like for the last decade.
I re-
Um,
you never stop.
it's absurd. It's not smart. It's just but I look at it, and my dad used to tell me, he said, try to do 20% more a day than you think you could accomplish. Just try. He goes, because if you could do even 10% of that and you could accomplish it, at the end of the year, you are so far ahead of everybody else. It's
Wow.
incredible. And so
That's
those
awesome.
little things. And so like, even let's say that, like, what does that look like? Okay. It looks like you're at a conference, you've been in the booth all day, you're tired. You want to, like, I'm tired of talking to people. It's like, yeah, I could get food into my room, or I could go sit down in the bar in the lobby and strike up a conversation with someone. Okay, it's 10 p.m. I could go back to my hotel room, but there's a place 3 doors down and I don't really feel like being out anymore, but let me take a lap through there and see who I could see and start a conversation.
Yeah.
Okay, now it's midnight. I've talked to 20 new customers and I've been up since 5 this morning and I'm really tired and I could walk into my room and go upstairs and I go, let me take one more walk through the lobby because I know I'll know somebody.
As your sleep coach, Bert, you're killing me. But I get it. I get it. Yeah.
I see it. It's hunting season. And if it's hunting season, I need to be in the woods. And we talked about that earlier. So I know I'm not going to be at this conference for a month. I'm going to be here for 2 days. So I'll sleep when I get home because right now is when I make my money, is how I build my brand. So I'll walk through the lobby and I'll see someone I know and we'll talk training until 2 a.m. And then you die basically when you get home. But then that's when your recovery and your supplementation and everything comes in. But if you didn't play hard and work hard, and when people talk about working hard is at 8 hours a day. It's not 10 hours a day. I mean, I used to talk to a buddy and he was like 40-hour work week. Yeah, that's what I call Tuesday afternoon. He's like, we're already there by, and I go, right. And the people I've seen that are hyper effective, that's how they see it. They see it as opportunity, the opportunity for me to take one more walk through the lobby and see if I know anyone.
And two, I think what you're intimating is it's during hunting season, right? And that's not all year around.
It's not all year round.
And so what you're doing when you're on matters. And then you also, because
there has to be the other side.
I see you with your family. You have that other side. And so arguably, circling back to rest and recovery, it doesn't all have to be the same way. Everybody has their own ways. And and I can very clearly see how the 2 hours that you're not sitting in front of the mush box, watching somebody else's fake life, as you said, that's when you're doing you're down regulating. That's when you're preparing your body, giving it the signals of this is soothing. It's soon time to go to bed. And I'm filling my cup with family time, with all of that.
It's always undulating. And that's where I don't think people understand. They see it as like, no, it's undulating. You're play hard, rest hard, and then stack the deck as much as possible. The same way we look for every advantage during hunting season or business or whatever it is the same way when you come home. You're like, hey, if I can do in this next 2 hours, if I could do a sauna and ice and sauna and ice and magnesium and this supplementation and this, and then I could get into bed and I make sure my sleep, my Chilipad's all filled up, and I'm going to go to this, and I know exactly 83, good, 80, this is not, and then you go back and you got it super dialed and you get it set where it wakes you up early in the morning. I know when I get up to 105 in the morning, my back gets warm and I feel good, and then I get up and what do I first go and I do my stretching, and then when you do that, you're like, I hit so many positive, and I kind of call it like the monetary model of training. And that's why I'll ask people, I said, how far could you walk if I just said walk as far as you can? And they go, I don't know, like 20 miles. I said, I said, how much far? I don't know, 15 miles, 20 miles. I go, if there was $100 bill every 50 yards, how far could you walk? They go, as long as you'd let me. It's different.
There you go.
If you see life as everything extra I do, good or bad, for however, if you see it as adding money to your bank account or adding a brick into your, what I used to call my defensive fortress when I would go into competition, if everything is a plus or a minus and all I have to do is see what the pluses are, and and then I just walk around life and pick them up. How long do I get to walk? How long do I get to walk?
What a mindset.
And that mindset makes everything easy. Kinda.
Yeah.
Because you're like, okay, I'm just gonna win today. I'm gonna walk by a water fountain. I'm not gonna walk by it. I'm gonna stop and I'm gonna drink it for 10 seconds. And I just think, hey, I just won. I did something that helped me. And then after a while, you get the mindset of, hey, I've won 20 times today already. It might be little wins.
Yeah.
It might be little wins, but with the end of the day, when you're tired and you're worn out, and you go, yeah, but I won a lot today. And then when you go into battle, which is competition, which is business, when it's mental battles, then you're like, no, I win. usually every day I have a whole bunch of wins. I'm a winner. I
Mm.
win stuff. And it's not being egotistical. It's being confident and believing in what you're doing.
And hitting your marks.
And hit your marks. You're hitting them,
Absolutely.
and so that's where I wish more people would see the opportunity of the day. There's so many opportunities to win during a day. And if you're not paying attention and doing that little bit extra, you're just leaving that money on the ground. Just leave it.
Absolutely. Wow. So, to pivot a little bit here, at an NSCA 2018 Personal Trainers Conference, you did a presentation called Be Legendary, 10 Steps for Leading an Impactful Life, where, first of all, now I get where Be Legendary comes from because I've got all the t-shirts and all the sweatshirts.
Yeah,
I'm
sure.
like, now I get it.
Yeah.
You offered insights in that presentation into effective leadership and personal development within the fitness industry.
Mhm.
What are a few of those steps specifically, and do they translate into peak performance in general?
First of all, I believe most everything I see in business is not necessarily business. It's just life that is in business form in the medium of business. I'm not a good business person. I try to figure out life, and if that's what I'm doing that day is business, then maybe if I do good at life, I'll maybe do good at business, I guess. But I kind of see everything very, very similarly, whether it's competition, whether it's whatever. So number one is belief and trust. And that's what we talk about within our staff. Like, if you believe in me and believe in what I'm saying and trust that I will every time I can, I will do what is right for the team, and you could trust my actions, then we could work from there. If you cannot believe and not trust, either way, it's kind of a deal breaker regardless. You either someone needs to change one side or the other, or you need to be removed from the team. And that's kind of what my wife and I call it rule number one. And we've said this, we've been married 15 years, and rule number one, it goes over everything. So rule number one is believe and trust me that I will not intentionally hurt you. Period. I will hurt you because I'll be stupid. I'll be ignorant. There'll be apathy days. There are 100 other things. I'll just brain fart, whatever it is, but I will not intentionally hurt you. And so if I could believe and trust that you will not intentionally hurt me and I will not intentionally hurt you, everything else is solvable.
Yeah.
Everything. And then that's the easiest thing in the world. And sometimes we'll both get hot. I'll go, hold on. What's rule number one? Am I saying this to you right now to hurt you? No, we know rule number one means I am not. Then maybe we're just misunderstanding what we're talking about. Maybe I'm just seeing it differently. And then we could cool down and go, yeah, I know you wouldn't hurt me. Okay, so I must be seeing this differently. That is so important in business, so important in life, and so important in being a leader. And so belief and trust. And when I talk to people, I say, do you believe? And there's two different ways to read that. Do you believe? Or do you believe? And then put something in that. Two different ways to see it. And so I ask people, how are you saying it? Because you hear it around the office. Do you believe blah, 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 blah?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Wow.
right away, that's a negative. That's someone that I go, hey, we got to reestablish this belief and trust. But once it's lost, one of us needs to go. My opinion. So
That's fascinating. It's so, sometimes concepts are just so basic. And then when you hear them, it's like, yeah, well, that's logical. Yeah, but have you really thought about it? The two different intonations of that same phrase and how does that apply to you? Yeah, that's phenomenal.
And start catching yourself. How am I phrasing this? What's the tone that I'm using? And generally when that self-selects pretty quickly too. So one of the other ones is no gray areas. And so gray areas are, I hate to say multitasking. I have to remind myself of that because when I've screwed up, it's generally been from gray areas. I'm kind of doing this and I'm kind of doing that. And a lot of times it doesn't matter. I mean, I could text really well driving. I can. I shouldn't, but I can. But I don't need to. And it's very gray. I need to either be driving or I need to stop and be texting.
Mm-hmm.
And the times I'm like, ooh, that was close. Were you really paying attention? No. And what gray areas lead to is sloppy movements. So we call about no sloppy movements. It's a gray area. Is a lack of focus leads you to sloppy movements, and sloppy movements then lead to what we call footholds. Footholds are unintentional leverage you put against yourself with a competitor or situation. So, like if we were in negotiation with one another, and negotiation it's competition, right? So it's easier to see it in competition. So if you and I are competing against one another and we're deadlifting today, both of us are 500 pounds, and one of us is going to win, one of us isn't. A foothold I would be giving you is that I didn't get good rest last night. I unintentionally gave you leverage over me and gave you something on me that I didn't need to. And that generally comes from blabbing in your mouth a little too much, not thinking about what you're saying. In negotiation, that's a lot of times, you say something or you promise something that maybe you can't do and you don't think about it. Well, now you've given your competition or that other person a foothold because they're going to hold you to it.
Right.
They could grab on you. It's kind of like in wrestling. Like I could grab now, I got something to hang on to, and now you're in trouble. And so we just talk about how the wheels generally come off. You lose you lose belief and trust. It causes you to have gray areas, loss of focus, that causes you to make sloppy movements, that causes your competition to get a foothold on you. And at that point, you're in trouble. And so I'm using these as negatives, but we in kind of that step by step is know this, know that, know, because it's easy to see it when you see it. Okay. Does that make any
Right.
sense?
Absolutely.
And then
Absolutely.
from there, at some point, you just have to cut toxins. You just have to say, hey, this person, this relationship, in a non-emotional way, it's okay that we walk away.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's okay. I don't dislike you. I don't hate you. Like, but if the belief and trust is gone and we've gone down this path, it's okay to cut toxins. That might be cutting toxins of yourself. That might be your own behaviors. That might be your own vices or whatever they are. And then last one is refocus. Is just go, okay, we've cleared the deck. We know we're not going to do great movements that lead us into this thing. We're going to refocus and we're going to go right back up to belief and trust. And now we have a different eye. And now we're going to hold belief and trust as long as we possibly can. And so like that's 6 steps. I even have a sticker that I made and a Sorinex sticker. This was 6, 7, 8 years ago. And I gave it to everybody and they have it stuck on their desk.
Wow.
It's like, where are we at on this right now? And it was a specific situation that I saw within the company that was developing that I kind of wrote those out. And some of them had been from personal experience, just thing outside of the business that I had seen. And I just saw it and I go, oh, one of them was I was deer hunting and I was at a place that I had a lot of information on. I knew this giant buck was coming from across the field. I set up way far away from him. I knew I was set. He'd been there 3 or 4 days. It's a done deal. So I'm sitting in the stand, get bored. I get on my phone. I start texting. I start working. What is that?
Gray areas.
Gray areas. Okay. You're with me. Here, I see something out of the corner of my eye. Now, if you know anything about deer hunting, you don't move quickly. Deer see movement. They don't see. And I see this and I go, I'll look real fast. Sloppy movement. Boom. Sloppy movement. Oh, that's a deer. Second sloppy movement. Grab my binoculars. Wham. That's 2. Big deer don't give you a third.
Yeah.
Comes up and it's like, whoa, this monster. And I'm like, that's what I've been looking for. But he saw the first movement. He saw the second movement. And then you're like in this standoff and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
And then you go to get your weapon and that deer's boom, he's out there. We never saw him again for 2 years.
Wow.
And I looked at it and I'm like, what did and I go, it was checkmate. What did I do wrong? And that's where I came up with gray areas and sloppy movement. I was like, I know better than to move like that. I had sloppy. Why did I have sloppy movements? Because I wasn't focused. If I was focused on my at hand, I'd have looked and I would have seen. I would have waited till his head gone down. I'd have picked up and that deer would have been mine. That was a done deal. And so I started seeing. I was like, I gave a foothold against myself, and I kind of started wrapping this whole thing. And I started thinking other things in my life. I was like, oh, this is a common theme. When I screw this up, is because it follows this pattern. So,
Wow. The whole time, no, I'm listening and I am circling back to the rig. you put the onus with your invention of the rig, you put the onus on the user.
Yes.
Like, here's your anchor, here's your set point,
Sure.
execute, and then you have to continuously adjust, and you have to check. Is there a gray area? Is it not working for the movement you're looking for? Then you have to adjust, but it's up to you to prioritize the movement,
Yes.
what you're getting out
Yes.
of it, and reset
Yes.
that rig.
That's
The
the
whole
fun
time
part is because this business, life, relationships, training, all of it's the same thing. And I enjoy the outdoors and hunting and training. That's just my modality of that.
Yeah.
There's other people, it might be music, it might be art, it might be counseling, it might be anything, but what I've found, it generally follows similar patterns.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I just
So at the end of the day, and just from what I've heard from you, you start, I love it when I hear people's kind of daily rituals or what they do, their routines. You start preparing for bed when you said you wake up in the morning to warmth and stretching. And so you're
Yes.
preparing for downregulation by starting your
Yes.
day off right.
And I'm
Clearly
preparing
you're
for upregulation with
Yeah.
the eating up, because then I know I will be able to do more things in an hour from now if I do the right thing now.
Right.
If I don't, I've kind of created a break in that system.
Right. So what are your 2 or 3 non-negotiables for you as far as preparing you physically, mentally, emotionally as an entrepreneur, as a dad, as a husband? What are your 2 or 3 non-negotiables?
One of the physical non-negotiables is training. It's training in some regard.
Movement.
People, oh, you must train every day. No, it's real. It's reality. I don't get to every day. But there's an effort to do some sort of strenuous movement a few times a week. That could be 5, that could be 6, that could be 2. That could be one really, really big day because that's all I had. But the intent for that, I feel I can never lose, because once that is lost, the intent of this whole thing kind of gets lost.
Right.
So physical movement is big. That goes right along with nutrition. I don't eat perfectly every day, but again, I see it as building that brick. Or did I pick that brick up today to add to my fortress? Did I pick up that free dollar bill on the ground? Or did I bypass that because of my laziness, maybe convenience? And then you have to kind of atone to that later on. And then lastly, just it's my family. It's making sure they know 100% that I love them and that I'm there for them. And I lost my dad this year, and it was really, really hard. But a good part of it is I know that everything that needed to have been said was said. Thankfully, I saw that 10 years ago and realized, like, I need to really make sure, because there's one day I won't be able to say anything else.
Yeah.
And so I kind of see it as like, make sure your bill's always paid up, And so, every time the last 30 years we ever left each other, it was, I love you, every time.
Yeah.
Because I realized one day I won't be able to say it, maybe, and I couldn't think of, wow, what if one day I didn't say it?
Yeah.
And so, but that's like goes to my family now, is I realize there may be one day that I go off on a business trip and I don't make it home. Sucks to think about, but when you think about it in that way, you live your life more intentionally each day, because then it's when my son wants me to read a book to him and it's already really, really late. If I lay in bed with him another 5 minutes and connect with him and listen to him read, I realize if I somehow leave this earth tomorrow, I gave it my best that I could, even in the micro levels. And so I find if I do that, I feel less anxious, and I feel more fulfilled that I'm leaving this world and my family better than I found it. But I believe it has to be an everyday thing, because I don't think we get hey, guess what? You're going to clock out on this date, and get all your debts paid up. So I try to stay in the black.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think you do a heck of a job doing that. So where can people learn more about Sorinex and what you guys have going on?
Check us out on Sorinex.com if you want to see that side of it. Instagram, we're pretty active on Sorinex, Sorinex, and Bert Sorin on the same.
We've appreciated having you as part of our family for so many years, and we've appreciated all the partnerships and all the conversations that we've had.
Oh, you guys are game changers. You guys are game changers. It's I mean, not only the product, but the insight and the education that you guys have and the support. I mean, that is an absolute game. I'll be honest, like, as stupid as it sounds, I was out of distilled water for a while, and my unit ran dry, and I was just running, and I was like, I just realized I was mad. I wasn't recovered as much, and then I was like, I got my unit going again. I was like, oh yeah, I was just sleeping horribly. Like, yeah, that's it. So I tell everyone, I was like, you're an absolute fool if you don't get one. So I'm not just saying this because I'm on your podcast. I've said it on a lot of other podcasts too.
When I've spoken to the groups of people that go to the Summer Strong events and all those hundreds of people that are in the room, and I'm like, who here sleeps hot? And it's everybody's hand goes up.
Everyone, bunch of muscle
Like,
mass, sleeps hot.
it's hot in this room. I don't even know what the AC costs you during that weekend, but it's like all the
That's
muscle in
one
that
thing
room.
that I found that I save money on my utilities too, because I don't have to crank my house down to like 68. I just turn chili sleep down.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
Well, we have really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so
Likewise.
much for joining us today. Information, inspiration, and opinions are my own and are not intended to be medical advice. Always consult a qualified healthcare provider before making any changes to your diet, exercise routine, medical treatment, or if you think you may have a sleep disorder. Conversations I have with subject matter experts are intended to continue our efforts to optimize your sleep for better health, more energy, and improved physical and cognitive performance.